Hi guys, it's Christmas time and it's also time for another digital painting. It's been a while, I know. So I am going to be starting off a Christmas Carol painting series with a digital painting. This digital painting is going to be Rudolph the Red-nosed Reindeer. Okay, so I can't sing and I also can't share the music on this one because it's under copyright laws, but I can walk you through the painting. My series is going to be digital, acrylic, watercolor painting, and I will illustrate as many Christmas carols or Christmas songs as I can by Christmas time. So let's begin with Rudolph. So just to be clear about the app I'm using the Pigment app. It's coloring. I'm a premium, meaning paying customer, and this is unsponsored. What I'm teaching you here or showing you is the composition and the brush sizes and the opacity. The brush sizes and opacity you can see now on the screen. On the left screen is actually a video record so you can see my pen moving, and on the right side is just how I can see the screen, and you'll notice that the colors are different on the left side and the right side, and that's why I publish them side by side so that you can have more of my angle of the brush as I'm pushing it down. And that's really important, the angle and the pressure that you're using. And maybe I'll talk about the pressure. I tend to have a very light hand, and this is really good information for you to have. Okay, and so right now I am using a fill brush, and I don't know the name of it, but you'll have to check it out. I don't know the names of any of this. I tend to use really bright colors because the brighter the color you use, the cleaner the appearance. I try not to use like dusky colors until maybe, it depends on the painting. But here, these are really bright colors that I've chosen. And then I put layers on top. And I started with a bright blue, and I layered it several times because rather than just one dense opaque layer, I found that if I put different like swipes down, I can get like a different feeling. It's amazing what you can learn by this kind of experimenting. On the left side it's definitely brighter than on the right, which is just cool as I'm looking at it now. Also at the top I put in a darker color. I don't use a lot of the darker colors except just to deepen or for shadows. And the bottom I brought up another sky blue. You'll check out the color there. So let's begin with my commentation that I made as I was painting. And you'll notice I'm not really good at talking when I'm painting because I'm focused on color and composition and not on language. Ha ha ha! Well, I wasn't talking really a lot, so I thought I would give a little bit more commentation. So for the people who have non-premium, you can go and get the oil brush and you'll get about the same results as I'm getting with my airbrush. I use the airbrush so heavily, and that is why I pay for premium, because of that airbrush. I like some of the other features too. So what I'm doing here is I don't have it on high opacity. It's kind of maybe 2/3 up, and I am choosing a bunch of different colors to put in. These are supposed to be tree shapes, and they're like little half moons, and I'm just lightly touching the canvas, or yeah, let's call it the canvas. And I'm just putting in blobs right now just to get the idea of what these trees are going to look like. And that right there, that blue that I just put in, is really dirty, so I did an undo. I don't like I said, those dusky colors. It's just not going to work on these bright Christmas colors that I want to create here. I am trying to put some of the darker colors on the far left and the far right because this is going to be a moonscape. The moon's rays or the light is going to be down the center. Also, eventually I'll have the reindeer there, so I don't need to have a lot of detail, but I will have some. I don't know exactly where the back is going to be. I haven't really planned this. I have just kind of figured the overall shape of the painting, but I don't have a huge plan yet. Anyway, I'll work with it. That's the whole idea. It's what can be created from imagination. That's just the coolest journey. You'll see me put down some of the darker blues. I'm just experimenting right now, just trying to figure things out. And I didn't like those mounds. The mounds were like little round hills. It was looking freaky. So I thought it was too controlled, and so now I'm spreading it out, spreading out the colors, kind of like like the trees are growing down a hill or something. I like the effect. And so, yeah, I'm going to go with that. I'm just inventing as I go. That's what you guys do. That's cool. And feel free to be as creative as you want with those colors. Just think about color harmony. You don't want like garish yellow against a dusky green. It might be really weird because you have the warms and the cool colors together, and that would be weird. These are all very bright, warm colors, the warm color of blue and the warm color of pink. That's for a later discussion. It's not for this one now. Maybe I could make a video on that. That would be really cool. It's kind of a serious topic, but you know, people who use the Holbein paint, this is just off the topic, but people who use the Holbein paint, I find the colors kind of weird. Just because when you're mixing a yellow, for example, with a pink, some of those yellows are cool, and when they hit the pink that is warm, you get a weird color in between because you're not supposed to mix warms and cool colors if you want bright colors. That's when they get dusky, and that's what I'm seeing in some people who paint with Holbein. I'm not criticizing Holbein, it's just my experience. I shouldn't have said that, but I'm going to leave it. So it's just FYI for somebody, they might benefit by it. Okay, back to the concept of digital painting. Just dragging down the colors. By the way, I'm just lightly touching the screen. I just think it's better that way. Dragging the colors along, trying to create lines, but I don't want to obliterate the undercolors. So a lot of my paintings are color on top of color. And right now I'm surprised that my opacity is so high, because normally I tend to paint with like 50% opacity. And maybe it's because I was just trying to lay down initial color. And here, because I'm painting in a smaller area, I don't think I changed my brush size. I'm just being a little bit more careful with the flow. It's now time to get a little bit more specific with the detail. And because the moon is in the center, that means the shadow is going to be on the left and the right side. And that's what I'm trying to explain with my little brush waving right now. Down the center is the moonscape. On the left side, over there, is where the shadows are going to be. And on the far right of the hills. Woohoo! I remembered. Woohoo! Putting in a little bit of shade to kind of show the shadow and to separate, you know, the bright pinks and the bright blues. And as I was saying there, I really pretty much kept more shadow on the pinks than I did on the blue, but I think I corrected that later without even talking about it. I think by that time I was just in pure Zen mode of painting, and I had shut up and I wasn't even talking anymore. That's me when I paint. Language goes bye-bye, and color it's like a journey. I just ride on the color. I think it's kind of weird. I know a lot of other people like that. I'm not totally weird. So just darkening on the far left and on the far right. And it's just a hint of a color. I just put these little tiny layers on top. I'm lightly touching the canvas. And this is a red, which is kind of cool. It looks really cool against that pink. And you do want the pink, you know, when you add white to red, it becomes pink. And that's what the moon is doing to the hills. When the moon hits the hills, they will become pink. And I'm going to deepen that pink in a bit. Or shall I say lighten it? This was pure experimentation, just throwing these colors down, and I'm like, that looks cool because, you know, that's like the wind is blowing the snow. And in the real world, we really rarely have pure white. So this is kind of like a snowscape. This could be, oh, and here I'm showing you what it means to push hard and to push lightly. On the left side where I, put out that power of blue, I was pushing hard. I'm using the same brush size, but because I push so lightly, you don't see a lot of pigment being thrown down. And a minute ago you saw me putting a little shadow on the moon, and then I'm like, I was saying this in the video, I'll probably regret putting the shadow in later now, so I'll put it in later. And because once you go forward to undo something, it takes a lot of energy, so I thought I would just focus on the moon later. I have no idea what I'm going to do with that moon yet, but something will happen. Now it's time to bring out some of the hills, the lighter color on the hills. And I know it's pink, but that's exactly what the moon is going to be doing to the reds. It will be making the reds into a pink, and that looks like the moon is laying its rays or its sunbeams, moonbeams, something across the sides of those hills. Hey, I like that. Look at the color there. This looks kind of surreal, which is cool. I'm a really picky painter. I do a lot of detail, and people, if it's too much detail, just fast forward a part. It's totally cool. Everybody has a different focus. Be creative with your color, your styles, your texture. I guess I'm singing to myself right there. Actually, when I was playing this back later, I was listening to myself, and like I said that I can't paint and color at the same time. So whenever I was explaining something in detail, I stopped painting. So that was what it was happening there. I was doing a discussion between using the technical pen or the airbrush, and I decided to use the airbrush on this because I get softer edges. If you use the technical pen, you get harder edges, and I didn't want to do that because this is a moonscape, and at nighttime there's a little bit of glow on everything, or the details are a little bit blurry, and so I'm trying to recreate that. I need food. Just little curly cues. I'm making it up. Maybe these are trees. I don't know. Use your imagination. If the curly cues are too weird for you, do scribbles. Round scribbles. Just scribble, 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 scribble. And it's so cool. Put your darker scribbles at the bottom and the lighter ones at the top. And then highlight just a few lines in the top part, and it will look totally cool. To me, these are like Christmas scribbles, and they remind me of candy canes. So if you want to go and lick a couple of those, that's totally cool. I think they look lickable. Well, maybe not. And I know I put these in a line, so it looks like they all have pretty much the same height, and they all are growing in kind of a line, which is not typical of nature. But this isn't about realism, it's about just spontaneous creativity and putting some color down, and who is really going to notice, because they hopefully will just notice the reindeer in the front and they won't notice all the particular details in the back. So you don't have to be really specific about your detail in the back. For dear Rudolph, as I called him Bambi somewhere along the way, you should be a little bit more careful. And here I'm just putting a little bit of a darkening, just a deeper shadow right along the pink, where the pink and the blue meet. I don't really need it because I have enough, but I wanted to add just a pop of contrast. I'm not sure it's really needed, but me, I'm a detail person. The reason I do a little flick at the end, I found that if I do that little flick, what I'm doing is I'm pulling the pressure of the brush up, and so it becomes really long and thin and slender. It's tapering end, and it's just something that I've noticed by that when I do the flick, and so that's why you see me. It's kind of weird looking at it, but when I'm doing it, it makes total sense. Actually, watching myself color is kind of weird. Okay, here I was explaining about the detail work that I'm going to be doing. Because right here, the moon, I'm on the right side, the moon is coming from the left. I'm showing that. I thought at first about putting a white highlight down the middle of this candy cane tree, and it didn't work. It just doesn't look right. So I undid it, and I decided, well, the moon is from the left, and so on the left side is where there's going to be moonlight, and so that is what I am drawing in. Actually, as I'm looking at some of these lines right now, I'm thinking how anemic they are. Later I start drawing in like a wider white, and I like it better. And I go over some of these early lines, so if you want to do that, that's really cool. What I just did is, it's so messy. When I zoom in, I see some of these little weird endings or little hanging lines that I don't like. I have to get rid of them. I'm just like, I just have to get rid of them. I don't like them. So what you do is you just hold your pen down on the pigment that you want to pick up, and it will pick up, that's what that little flash is. It's picking up that color of pigment, and then just scrub over, the line that you want to disappear, and then pick up the white again from the color selector and continue painting. And here I'm starting to over some of those lines that I thought were really anemic. I've also put up the speed because otherwise, it's just going to take forever at this kind of rate. I do tend to go quite slowly. The more you zoom in, the more control you have, the neater your lines will be, much neater. You can really get beautiful detail, but that's also why I zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, because not only am I moving from one place to another, but I'm checking, because up close it might look great, but when you look at the broader picture, it might look like too much detail, or might not be white enough, or anyway, that's why I'm constantly looking at the close-up and, quote, the big picture. And right there you just saw me testing the brush size. I sometimes, when I change brush sizes or locations or something, I think, oh man, it's just not right, and so I will test the brush size just somewhere and then quickly erase it. It's no big deal. Digital painting is awesome for that. Lots of experimentation. A comment on this kind of painting. If you are really wanting to go into calligraphy, this kind of painting right here is really cool to do. It is very good for learning how to do the thick and the thin of calligraphy and the highlights of calligraphy. That would be for another lesson. I love calligraphy. I love Asian calligraphy and Western calligraphy. Very different. They hold the brush very differently. They have different philosophies of the brush. But the creation is so beautiful. It can be elegant. And so that's what these lines are. If you can get the shading to be right, it looks great. Oh, and you'll notice that I'm now painting from the other side, or, putting the moonlight from the other side on this. Anyway, on the left side of the canvas, I've switched sides, and so the moonlight now is coming from the right and no longer from the left. Originally, when I was painting by myself, I started to put the moonlight, like I was on the other side of the canvas, and I'm like, wait a minute, I actually painted 3 or 4 minutes before I caught myself. So just FYI too, when you're painting, that you put the moonlight on the right side, meaning the correct side. So now is the time when we get to sketch in the deer. So I have the opacity on fairly low, and also I have the brush on kind of a low size. The reason I don't put it any lower, the brush size that is the finer it gets, the scratchier it is to the surface. And little scratches are really hard to correct, but fuzzy lines are not. So you can blend in fuzzy lines easier, and that's why I kind of have a fairly decent brush size. What's really picky here is getting the legs right, and I did the legs and redid the legs and redid the legs, and you don't see that. So don't feel bad about redoing those legs a dozen times, if not more. So my idea is to get the legs in, and I want them to be a little bit tapering, thicker at the top, or maybe thinner at the bottom, in the middle, and then flaring again at the bottom. But I'm trying to kind of get a style. I don't want just straight up and down. You can be creative if you want. Or of course you're going to be creative, but don't feel like you have to copy mine. Now here I have the brush again. It's a larger brush, but I'm not filling in the deer entirely. I'm leaving a little bit of like edge coloring from underneath. That means I don't have to do a lot of shading later. The shading has already been done. Look, under the jawbone is the same. I've left a little bit of the blue, leaving a little bit in the middle of that ear. I'm not filling in the ear. It's a method I use a lot in my acrylic painting. Not so much in the watercolor, but in acrylic painting you are going to maybe paint an owl or maybe a bird over a background. If it's a dark background, you can use the darkness to be part of the shadow, the underlying shadow under the owl or under the bird. So you don't have to paint the whole owl underneath. It's like you're just putting layer on top of layer. Anyway, trust me, I use that method a lot in acrylic painting, and I didn't realize that I could apply that method here, but it's once you learn an artistic style or technique or something, everything is transferable. You can transfer it to other art forms. It's so cool. Oh, here's my little Rudolph that I sketched out. I was testing out, how to do the legs, and that's why I had to do the sketch. And I wanted kind of a long-necked, long-antlered Rudolph, kind of a regal, not, childish one with great big round eyes and a large childish head. I wanted something like an impressive young buck that had pride. So that was what I was drawing here. So notice the legs here. They are not parallel. They have a little bit of a bow. And mine right now are a little bit straight up and down. They will be changed shortly, and that's what I'm trying to change right now. This is an editing method I've picked up when you are needing to correct maybe the shape of something and just adjust the size or something with digital painting. You can use the brush or the pen, pick up the color that's right nearby, and you'll see that little flash of, the color that's being picked up. And then with your airbrush, I like the airbrush this way, on kind of I like size 2 for really clean fine work, size 2, 3, or 4, depending on, how detailed my work is. And then I'll go along the edge of, for example, the outer part of the deer, straightening out the leg, and then I pick up like the white color is above this right now, or maybe that like manganese blue. I'll pick that up and just do a small area. And that's how I slowly whittle away at some of those outside shapes to get a slender shape that I'm looking for, or just to trim down an area. And here I smudged the color on the snow, and so I just have to pick up some other color and do go back and forth a little bit. You can use, it's a blur tool. I don't use it that much, and I could have used it in this, but I didn't. I just pretty much stick with the airbrush. I think in this painting I used the airbrush very, very heavily, probably 90% of the time. I did use the spatter, the technical pen a little bit. Yeah, it was probably 95% the airbrush. I just love that. Picking up that blue and then kind of blending it in, so just to make it look clean, like the different layers of blue are horizontal. I just have to get that kind of horizontal feel of color back. Yeah, I guess I feel that way. Anyway, weird. This is really picky work. It's possible to cover a lot of this up. Or you can just ignore it. So right now I'm doing a lighter outline on the outside. The moon is behind. Imagine a ball. When the lighting is behind the ball and it's coming towards you, you can still see the shape of the ball. If the light's on the other side, the shape of the ball will be there. It's the same with the deer. The moon is on the far side. You're going to see the shape of the deer in kind of like, it's a little bit lighter along both sides of the legs, around the antlers, around the ears. So you can put that realistically, or you can pop with the color a little bit in this kind of a painting. But it looks good. Now it's going to be a little bit lighter there because the deer has a lot of moonlight, or could have a lot of moonlight on his back. Trying to get the shape of the leg. The leg isn't quite right. I'll fix it. I'll play around a lot. So you can see that the legs are a little bit tapered now, the forelegs. The back leg needs a little bit of fixing still. Where you see the pigment, that peachy skin color is thicker, that's because I'm actually applying more pressure and then lightly lifting the brush. And that's why the ear has that little bit of a flap on it. That's from a little bit more pressure there. I'm cleaning up the back, making it really clean against that blue. And I will play with that back. I don't like it. Something's wrong. Actually, looking at it now, I see clearly what's wrong, but I didn't when I was painting because, you're just in the moment. And what is clearly wrong is that is one barrel-shaped deer. He's thick, he's heavy. And I realized that near the end, but it's too hard to fix that. It takes a lot of time. So I should have raised his stomach a bit and where the forelegs meet, but that's fine. It's This deer has been eating at McDonald's. These colors I'm laying are just, it's layer. Notice the opacity is less than 50%. These are layers. I put tons of layers down, layer on top of layer. I'm constantly adjusting the let's say the temperature of that deer, or the color of the deer. Picking up some muscle color now. And it's better to use a really wide brush when you're doing swipes like across the stomach. So you can do one swipe and it looks really uniform and smooth. If you use a smaller brush and do two swipes, you can see the brush marks. It's not as neat, it's not as clean looking. I don't know why I scrubbed that leg. It looked bad. So just putting a lot of color on the face. Trying to show the contrast of the muscles or where they are. Now I'm putting in the ear. You can't really see clearly, but first you get the idea where the ear is, and then you can adjust the size, and that's what I did a little bit, and then put in the color. I picked up some blue because now I want to focus on blue, and that's a really good color to put in a line. I'm not using any black here, not a bit of black anywhere in this painting. This is supposed to be a very bright Christmassy scene, and so if I put black, it's not going to be cool. And even though I put a blue line there, it's kind of harsh when you zoom in. From a distance, you can't tell. And right now I'm softening it with purple, like it's a shadow. Again, I have to zoom in and out. I hope people aren't feeling sick about this because it's just, you have to know that your color looks good close up, but you have to make sure that it looks decent when people are looking at it in the regular view. Color harmony. Pick up color from your environment and then put it elsewhere. That creates color harmony. If you have in the environment a color and you're painting a deer, put, like, maybe the deer is not, it's brown, but your environment is green, put just a hint of reflection of green on some part, just a hint, a light glaze on some of the fur that's closest to that green. You will, we say, marry the deer to the environment, and vice versa. They become more integrated. It's kind of the secret of color. Our skin takes on different colors based on the color that we are standing or sitting or whatever that's nearby. The moonlight is picking up some of the light, or throwing some light on those antlers. So I'm trying to pop some color on the side where the moon is shining. I don't outline everything, I just outline some parts, and the eye is happier that way. if you put a line across the whole antler equally, you don't feel like there's a curve then. So now I'm readjusting that ear. That ear was bothering me. So I'm trimming down the size. I picked up some of the dark blue background, and now I'm picking up some of the purple, and I'm just trimming the size. I'm not sure, you can check later, what the size of that brush is, but it's guaranteed to be pretty small because this is fine detail work. I'm adjusting what I just cleaned up. And you adjust one side of the antler and you have to adjust the other side. Okay. It gets really involved. And right now I'm just being really picky and making it look nice and clean. Here's a secret though. When your picture is really clean, like I just made mine pretty polished, I've noticed that I can, I save my pictures in JPEG and PNG and I share them or whatever, and I can put my pictures, some of them that I've used that, like really detailed pictures, I can blow them up pretty nicely. They're small. On Pigment, I think they're 4 inches by 4 inches or something like that. When I blow them up, I can get some pretty good sized pictures. I don't know, 8 by 8 maybe. I think that's as large as I've gone. They're pretty clean. I don't know if I would send them to a publisher for print on demand kind of thing, but I'm still getting pretty good, like I wouldn't say high definition, but maybe I can say high definition. So if anybody is preparing their pictures that they're like they're painting here for print on demand or for publication, think about that tiny detail. Here you can see a lot of blurring around the face of the deer. And so, for example, if you're going to be cleaning up your picture, take care of that blurring. Polish it, get rid of it. And right now I could stop. It would be fine if you were from a distance, but I don't want to stop. I want it to be very clean looking. So I pick up the blue 2 or 3 times to get the variation of blue in the background correct, and so it looks really real. So you don't see a line from the bright blue and the dark blue, so do it gradually. And I can tell where those lines are, and that's what I'm fiddling with, trying to get rid of. And it's really unusual. On the left side, I'm not seeing the line, but on the right side, that the blue blurring of where I was using the brush, I can see it on the right side, and that's what I could see in my view. Testing the brush size, and now cleaning up the background. Picky, I do know that. You'll notice that the top of the ear has a little bit of blue. That's cool. That's how the environment or the colors are reflecting a little bit on the deer. That is totally cool. You wouldn't do it everywhere, but in some areas it's going to be more noticeable and pronounced. Under the chin also you'll see. Here I'm slimming down the neck a little bit just to make it more elegant. I wanted an elegant deer. I don't want some childish, cartoony style deer. And maybe you can say it's still childish and cartoony, but I kind of like it. And here I get the bright idea that the antlers should be in the fore part of the forehead. And maybe that's true, but then it changes the angle of my head, and now I have to change that, which I don't think I really did that much. So now it looked pretty good before, but now it's looking a little awkward. Talk about redoing and undoing and redoing when you don't need to. I challenge you to take a video of your work and then go back and review it and see what you're doing. You'll learn a lot about your style. And here I'm slimming down the forehead. That really, after I put the antlers in the fore part of the forehead, then the shape of the head was then wrong. Yeah, testing it out from a distance, it looks much better. Now more polishing, polish, polish. If the nose is too long, it looks a little dog-like. Deer have kind of triangular heads, and this can fall in that category. It really depends on the shape of the head where you put the eye. And the eye, if you put it in the wrong part of the head, it will change the whole like demeanor, the expression, maybe it'll make it angry or happy, or the eye tells everything. As people say, it is the window to the soul. So this eye was a little bit, or the first eye I did was rather childlike. Oh, this is human eye. I didn't like this one at all. And then you zoom out and you're like, ding, nope, not this one. Delete, undo, no way. And now this eye is less human shaped, a little bit, quite a bit rounder. It's more almond with the point of the almond face are pointing towards the ear. Looks pretty good. And so now to put in a lot of the color. The shape first, and then we'll put in the color. So the lid is going to be a little bit darker. The top part, the top line. And then the bottom part of the eye will have a lot of like the darker colors, the deeper colors. The top part of the iris is going to be the lightest. And that is also where I'm going to put the blur of the reflection. In a minute, evidently I got sidetracked. And now the antlers are really dark compared to the head, so I'll have to change that. And I do eventually change that bit by bit by bit by bit. And so now I've decided to make the color of the deer darker. I will say this is a choice. I kind of think that the light color is very cool. So if you want to leave your deer lighter, that's great. Deer are all kinds of colors. They don't have to be, as bright reddish, whatever pinkish that I've made. I am thinking also of the color harmony, and I was bringing in the environmental colors onto my deer. I got a little ridiculous, but I kind of like the outcome. I do keep that peachy glow, and I use that kind of skin peachy color quite a bit as a glaze at the end to hide some of this purple red. Right now I'm just focused on getting the color as I want them, and I just throw a bunch of colors down. I'm experimenting, and I am trying just to get the muscle shapes generally. A little bit purple red where the muscles I think should be. Darken it up where some of the deeper tones should be, I think. Definitely in the hoof area. Some in the chest because the chest is furthest from the moon. This is kind of a glaze. It's not the final color. So don't, yeah, just get your shapes down, get where your shades you think should be. My shapes are already there, as I think, and so now I'm working on the shades themselves. A little bit of outlining here. Wow, that thing is powerful. That's a pretty big muscle right there. Okay, let's make this guy a reindeer. Let's give him a reindeer belt. Little bells and jinglies on it, I think. It's kind of cool. And I drew that breast strap, I guess, and I want to point out that it was not in the center. Right now I'm saying that the dip of the strap should be right in the center. And I left that so that you could see how I corrected it, and so how you can make sure that yours is correct also. Just making sure that the shape is looking nice. There's a little bit of a darker red underneath. And this is an orange, and the orange is just the base. I'll do more colors on top of the orange. I guess these are your jingle bells, or their lights, because I do light them up. And then to make the colors pop, put some yellow on. Like I said, it's about layering. And now, in this picture, there's very little white. And you know, when you do watercolor, they say retain the whites, save the whites, don't paint everything, keep some white back, because in watercolor, once the white is gone, the only way to get it back is with a gel pen or some white ink or gouache. So right now I am reclaiming some white, and that's fine in digital painting, but you need to have some contrast, and the white does it. So I have the white moon behind, which I'll fix later to make more like a moon with a little more shape and with more contrast against that head. And I'm adding a little bit of white also. This is giving it more depth. My picture needs a little more depth. And like I said before, when you zoom way in, you have so much control. You can do the smallest detail, and the eye will pick up on these little like beads, white beads, because it's against the red. And clean up the stomach a little bit. I'm glad I did that. Could have done more, but I'm glad I did that. Okay, and you'll see I'm not so neat there, but it doesn't really have to be specific, I guess. Mm-hmm. Zoom in, zoom out. Check, check, check. Make sure colors are right. Put a few stars in the sky. Make it magic. Different sizes, different shapes, different opacity. And put a few like sparklies on the hillside. I think I'm using really low airbrush, and I'm putting a lot of pressure down. You can use the technical pen for that, but the technical pen has kind of a pixely look, and that's why I don't like using it for little dots. And I think also the circle, I think there's a circle, I made it with the moon. I used the bubble or the circle brush, but it's very pixelated. I don't like using it very much. Not for little tiny details. Oh yeah, I forgot. I did use the glitter brush here. The glitter brush just adds a little bit of brightness. Like, look okay, you can go back and look at that example. But one side of the glitter brush, it's the far side of the pen that I'm using. You have a near side and a far side because it's kind of like a calligraphy style pen. The far side is thicker than the near side. And so that far side is the one I put at the top of the hills. Notice when I paint the left side of the canvas, how I position it, how I position myself to paint so I can achieve like the tops of the hills that have the most pigment from the glitter brush. You'll have to be very light when you push when you touch the glitter brush to the canvas. I erased several little, if you just lightly tap, it'll leave a mark. So just approach the hill very, very lightly and just lightly brush the top, and you'll get the softest glitter marks, and you won't see where your pen hit the canvas and where you lifted it. This is the chest, and so I was putting a little bit of depth under the belt, a little bit of shadow under the belt. I'm also putting a little shadow under the chin or the jaw. Adding some purple in. That purple kind of has a glamorous, beautiful look, I think. It adds to the deer. Oh yeah. Give that guy some reins. That kind of connects him off of the screen, so it's like he's filling up the screen better. He seemed kind of lonely just standing there. I'm putting a really fine line, dark line, under, so it looks like it's a 3D effect. And like I said before, the more you zoom in, the more control you have for those fine details and getting the shadow in the right place. Your line isn't wobbly. Here my line is a little wobbly. I didn't fix it, but if I had zoomed in, I wouldn't have as wobbly a line. If you look at it, you can clearly see it's wobbly. Now pay attention how I did that dark line. The dark line is under this side, and I lift right here, and then I go and pick up and leave a gap. That means the other rain is on the other side, and your eye will see that there are dimensional levels, And there's the near and the far. Your eye will see that. Your mind, it will tell your mind that, even though you don't really recognize it maybe, but your mind will recognize it as more 3D. So again, I think I need some more white just to pop the front. A lot of color in this, but yeah, more white would be nice. I'm leaving a little loop because if you have solid white, the eye isn't as attracted to it. So with that little spot of color inside, it just gives it more dimension and maybe depth. Oh yeah, Rudolph, hello. Now I did some experimenting with this nose, and a lot of experimenting. So this is what I came up with. Very, very, very low opacity, a large brush, and you're hardly touching the canvas, just lightly brushing it. Little bit of orange on top of that very bright yellow. Get the brightest of yellows. And a little bit of orange, and then bring out a little bit of red. I am touching the canvas. I'm putting more red on the lower part and leaving a little bit, yeah, right there you can see a little bit more depth to the red on the bottom part, just to give it that three-dimensional aspect. And I do play a lot with that nose. The nose was tricky. There you go, light up the night. It's a little bit overpowering on the red. Notice that it's on the left side it's a little bit more orange, and on the right it's redder. It's kind of ironic as I'm looking at it. I think it has to do with the angle of the light. When I filmed this, I had to turn off all the lights in my room because I kept getting a reflection in like the recording or from above, and so yeah, it was everything, all the lights were off. It was kind of cool. Okay, now let's make these into really interesting stars, some stars, just to give them more pop in the sky, more magic, more mystery. Different shapes there. Again, I'm hardly touching the canvas. I believe you'll have to correct me, I'm not really sure, but I might be using the technical pen right now. And if I am using the technical pen, that means there is a hard edge. It won't be as soft on the edge, which is fine. It depends on what you want. As I have the opacity quite low, then it's not going to be as noticeable. And for a star, maybe you do want a crisp line. And yikes, my star, the lines of my star are not parallel with the bottom of the canvas, and so I had to redo that. It should be perpendicular in the sky to the earth. It's not straight either. It's kind of hard from my angle because I'm pulling the brush towards me. Oh, I got a little flick there. I'm pulling the brush towards me, and so I don't have, it's not like I'm sweeping it sideways, which I have really good control, but if you pull it towards you or push it away from you, you won't have as much control. Okay, let's look at the spatter brush. I have the opacity a little bit below 50%. It's on a smaller size. And check out the color. It's kind of a bluish, a lighter bluish. And again, I am just lightly touching the canvas. And then I drop the opacity as I did, a second or third sweep. And then I decide I'm going to put a little bit of the spatter brush on the hillside on top of all that glitter. I get all these bread ideas. I think it was a little bit of an overdue, but anyway. Pink. Let's make our little boy pink. Ooh, hot pink. And put a little bit of red purple, not purple red this time, but a red purple on top of him. From a distance, it's amazing how dark he looks, and up close he looks much brighter. Deepening the shadow under the chin. I'm coming to the end. So now it's about, fine-tuning some of the shades and the shadow, making sure the shades are complementing the shape overall of the deer. Because if you get the shadows wrong, then you're going to make the shape of the deer look funky. So now, to make it more 3D realistic, I'm putting some shadow in the snow where the rains could be kind of like throwing their shadows. Throwing a little more color in the sky to make color harmony in the whole picture. And again, I'm barely touching the canvas. Even here also, just a light touch to the canvas. And these are my shadows in the snow. And because I put shadow in the snow, I'm going to have to change the contrast with the deer, otherwise it's going to be too medium. All the contrasts are pretty much the same, so I'm going to have to change something. Maybe add some more white or something. We shall see. Now for that glaze, that skin color glaze that really adds a nice texture. I don't know, it adds a nice glow to the deer. I love that color, especially when used as a glaze. And here up close, the color is even more amazing. I think that the color here and what I'm seeing in real life is a little bit different. Oh, here's the eye. This is the moment when we wake the little deer up. You will have a little bit of darker color at the top because that's where the shadow from the eyelashes or from the lid are. That recesses the eye a little bit. You'll see I put a little bit of blue, and even though I'm lightly touching over it, I did not cover that blue because that blue is part of the reflection in the eye now. This is the darkest moment in the painting. So I upped that purple red, put it on the deepest of opacities, and that is my quote, black, for this painting. It's a bit dark there. Bit dark. Gonna have to do something about that. Thin line, changing the contrast a little bit, just creating a little more. I'm waiting for the epiphany. When is the moment? It will come. Don't worry. Okay. Got our deeper shadows in. Shadows from the rains are also there, very light ones. It gives it that 3D look. And now we are on the home stretch. That forehead has not looked like a deer the whole time. But now with just a bit more color on the forehead and leaving kind of a lightness around the eyes, it's looking like a deer. The colors are kind of purplish as opposed to the red purples of lower. But this could be because the moonlight is hitting on the forehead more or reflected more on the forehead, and that would bring it into a lighter color. You do want the head and the eye to be quite clear, kind of to stand out. I don't know, that's something that people notice first of animals or people is the face and of course the head. And so getting the shapes right, the colors right is really important. And I like right now the gentleness in the face with the eye and the color that comes off of it, off of the forehead and down the nose. It's really quite attractive. And that purplish in the reflection of the eye, I like it. Hey, did something right. Okay, now to get the chin right. It's almost like this deer can talk to you. A little bit for the mouth. Ooh, it can talk. Look at that. Okay, pretty good. There's almost something friendly about that deer. I like it. There we go. Now the mouth is done. This is what it looks like in the bigger picture, and then up close, and you will see that nose. How did I do that nose? Yes, okay, so I didn't film that, and after I did the nose, I'm like, oh my goodness, that was really, it looked nice. I didn't think I would get that, so I have it on kind of a low opacity. This is airbrush, and I am just flicking in a very bright yellow, hardly touching the canvas, and streaking it. And here this is a larger airbrush, and again, like I did with the glow around the nose, I just put a little bit of pressure to create the glow. And for this one, I create the glow, and now I'm going to create the little rays of light, because the rays of light are really picked up on that glow underneath. And that's how I did the nose. Then I added a little bit of yellow into the night sky where some stars would be, and I cleaned up an area behind the head. It was kind of like there was a hill there. Now it looked okay when we were creating the background, but now it doesn't look okay. So I just kind of airbrushed it out of the picture. And this is what you're going to do. You'll also go and look around your picture, figure out some spots that need a little bit of polish, airbrush them out, and hopefully you'll have a very attractive Rudolph. I hope you enjoyed this, and I have more Christmas Carol illustrations coming up before Christmas. Hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you again.